I'm here with Maude with Alephium. We're going to talk about the project and some of the new updates and upgrades and changes that are coming to Alephium. Maude, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to be here, catching up a do-over from our failed interview at Bitcoin 2025. So thank you
That's
so much
right.
for talking to me a second time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for talking to me a second time. We sat down at not disrupt. Oh my gosh, BTC conference in Vegas and had a great conversation. And of course, my camera got about half of it, and the other half was completely blurred out. So the whole thing was just completely ruined. But we're here now, and I think this is a great setting to talk about Alephium and the project in whole, and where you've been, and really the roadmap into where it's going.
I'm very excited to talk about everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, can you share a little bit about your background and how you became involved with Alephium?
Yeah, of course. So I've been with Alephium now for 4 years. I'm in charge of operation, which in our case kind of means pretty much everything. When I started, it was pretty much everything, and now it's pretty much everything except coding and marketing. But I do have my hand into pretty much everything else, and I do provide some input on the marketing side as well. Before that, I worked in a Swiss crypto exchange.
Hmm.
I started, and so that was actually what started my journey into Web3 in 2017. So have been working in the Web3 space for now almost 8 years. And before that, I worked for a tech startup that was working for. That was developing software for self-driving cars, and if you wanted to build mobility services with self-driving car, we were building the coordination engine that would dispatch your vehicle, say who picks up which customer, and when
Wow.
does your vehicle go back and charge. And that's actually where I met a lot of the core contributor of Alephium, including Alephium's founder, but also some of our backend developers and front end and product manager as well. So I kind of, that's how I where I started led me to where I am today, because I am working with people I had a startup experience with in the past.
That's fantastic. Small world, huh?
Yeah, or it's kind of, if you like working with people, you tend to end up, to follow each other eventually, because you bring each other on. If you've appreciated working with someone and think um, they have great skills and experience. I think that's more what happened here.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah. So, for the viewers and listeners that aren't familiar with Alephium, how would you describe its mission and what sets it apart from other blockchains in this space?
Yeah. So at the time where a lot of blockchain moved from proof of, I mean, a lot, especially Ethereum, moved to proof of stake in the pursuit of scalability, and compromising to some extent on decentralization, accessibility. There was a question that came to the founders, like, how do we build really a resilient, censorship resistant, uh, and very efficient infrastructure for DeFi, for smart contract applications? So in the end, Alephium was born from a simple question. Can we preserve everything that made Bitcoin great? Decentralization,
Mm.
security, the simplicity of the UTXO model, but still deliver kind of a fast, intuitive Web3 experience that smart contracts are supposed to unlock. And so Alephium is the answer to that, so the answer is yes. And the proof is Alephium, basically. Um, and so we have innovation in a number of areas. One of the example is it's proof of work, but engineered for the future. We have a proof of less work mechanism that cuts down the energy consumption of the network up to 87%, while preserving the security of traditional proof of work. We have a scaling architecture that use shorting that scale above 20,000 transactions per second with 8-second block, which is as performant as um, proof of stake network, but it's decentralized, and we have, I think, a very unique development environment that brings together the best of what you can do on the account model that was introduced by Ethereum, the programmability, the ease of programming that you have,
Mm.
but we retain the inherent safety of the UTXO model that was introduced by Bitcoin. And so we are completely eliminating attack vectors like reentrancy, flash loan, that plague a lot of EVM chain. All of those attack vector are eliminated on Alephium, and we've really spent a lot of time making our development environment much better than what the norm is in the industry. Easier for developer to write code, more intuitive, and making it a lot harder for them to make mistakes. We also have a pretty fast growing ecosystem with over 70 project building and many more coming. And all of that, it runs on a single layer one. No bridge, no sequencer, layer two rollups, so trying to avoid the complexity and the fragmentation, and more importantly, the UX trade-off that comes with that you can see in the space. I'm
Mm.
sure you know that across the industry, there's not that many projects that continue, or now it's shifting a bit, but definitely at the time Alephium launched, there was very few projects that continue to push a little bit the boundaries of proof of work and the UTXO design, and even less so that we're doing it in the intent of being a blockchain for smart contract and decentralized application. So we try and bring the best of both worlds and delivering the Web3 that we were promised.
That's fantastic. So I hear and I hear, because we've talked already once before, multiple times, but you have a new upgrade and update coming to your system. Can you describe what this upgrade is and its primary goals?
I mean, so we've have regular update on the network. The Danube upgrade, which is the upcoming one that
Mm.
is currently on testnet, is the third one, and it's really step by step closing the gap when it comes to the user experience, whether you're a developer, whether you are a user, and it's really getting closer again to the Web3 that we were promised, a Web3 that is fast, accessible, and secure. So it's not just an upgrade, it's also proving that proof of work chain can be scalable, performant, and user friendly without having to compromise on decentralization, security, and that it is actually more than good enough for smart contracts.
So from a miner's perspective, because traditionally I'm a crypto miner, learning all about the other pieces of like Web3 and blockchain and what crypto really means outside of just mining and getting paid and mining and getting paid. From a miner's perspective, what are some of the key takeaways from this upgrade in terms of rewards or network participation?
There are a number one. So there are a number. Maybe I'll start with one around the tokenomics. So we're introducing tail emission. As of now, we have a pretty smooth emission schedule that is basically decrease somewhat linearly for the next 80 years. But at
Mm.
the end of these 80 years, as it is now, before the upgrade, the emission schedule kind of stops. And so with this upgrade, we introduce telemission. So that removes a little bit that cliff that in 80 years from now would have forced miners to rely on fee at 100%. It
Mm.
doesn't change anything on the current reward or the proof of less work mechanism. So it doesn't change anything now, but it basically gives an additional security budget after those first 80 years. And it's also, tokenomics are a very important aspect of due diligence that user do when they look into a blockchain. And we have a pretty unique setup. First, we're proof of work, which is far from the norm in today's industry. But more importantly, again, we don't have any halving. Or emission schedule is relatively slow compared
Mhm.
to even the majority of proof of work chain. And so it created a little bit of complexity around the tokenomics that sometimes prevented people from maybe diving a little bit more into Alephium. By introducing tail emission, it basically also makes clearer tokenomics, more in line with what people are used to see, which supports adoption at the end of the day. Because something that people would see the cap at 1 billion, they would imagine that it means big hidden inflation because they are used to
Mm.
either supply that exist from day one or that are mined very rapidly, and they would need to dive deeper into Alephium to understand that we have a much longer emission schedule. So there is that.
Makes sense. Yeah.
um, but we also have obviously this network upgrade, we are reducing block time. So we're reducing from 16 seconds to 8 seconds, but we are cutting the block reward. So that doesn't change. The reward doesn't change, but the blocks are faster. So to some extent, you have steadier and slightly less variance into your payout. But as a miner, you would want to make sure that you're pointing to, once the upgrade is released on mainnet, you would want to make sure that you use the latest node, or they are pointing out to the latest stratum endpoints, so that you are in line with the network. And so we've done also a lot of optimization into block flow, to reduce the rates of orphan stale blocks. And we've also improved the synchronization protocol, where it's much more efficient. It's sync 3 times faster. So you can have, again, that just makes the nodes more resilient and more accessible for you or for the pool that you use.
So you had mentioned making sure that you're pointing to the most updated node and stratum after the upgrade is released. 2 things there. One is the upgrade scheduled to release, and 2, that's dependent on the pool, right? So if you're pool mining with one of the most popular mining pools out there that are mining with Alephium right now, that's their responsibility. You as a miner just need to make sure that they're doing their part, right?
Exactly. So anyway, so right now the update is on the upgrade is on testnet. The next step will be that we will release basically the mainnet node. We will release the node that contains the version for mainnet with an activation date. When that happens, usually we'll leave several weeks. We'll contact all of the mining pools, anyone that uses a node or that is impacted by the upgrade, to make sure that they are updating their node and making any adjustment that they need to benefit optimally from the upgrade. Right now, actually, we'll be announcing the date tomorrow. But the date will be set today. So I don't know what the date is. Otherwise, I would have told you, so you could have had the date. But tonight we're confirming the date. So what I can tell you is, like, from the moment you and I've recorded, probably between 3 weeks to a month is when it's going to be. 3 to 6 weeks is when it's going to be activated on mainnet.
So with your new reduced block times, 8-second block times, what real world impact or differences will users and applications that are running on Alephium actually feel?
The thing is, people are obsessed with TPS, but TPS is your network capacity. It's not your network speed. And so the network capacity, you only feel it when the network is at capacity. If your network is dimensioned enough, you never really feel that capacity metrics, because your network is able to process all of the transaction that comes there. So as an end user, you only feel capacity limitation when the network is at capacity. But for most more recent network, the capacity is far from the actual usage. So as a standard user, what you are actually experiencing is the block time, because that's basically the speed at which your transaction is integrated into a block and processed by the blockchain. By dividing the block time by 2, basically it means transaction will be twice as fast, will be processed faster, 2 times faster. And so that unlocks potentially some DeFi use cases that need a slightly faster blockchain to be competitive. And so with our current block time of 16 seconds, we were already pretty competitive, and we were entering into the realm of, okay, we can be somewhat competitive against proof of stake chain, but we were on the losing end of that. Let's say with 8 seconds, we are now gaining territory and being, good into competing in terms of speed against proof of stake blockchain, and also starting to be competitive for certain DeFi application and protocols. But there are plans in the future to maybe reduce that block time even further, and so improve that competitiveness and speed even further.
Wow, that's impressive. So were there any surprises or maybe course corrections during testnet that's shaped the final rollout?
Not really. So we I say we like I did anything, but we Alephium, but more specifically the dev team, they spend a lot of time testing on DevNet before the testnet release. So usually
Okay.
we don't have any big surprise during the testnet phase, and most of the finding during testnet were mainly small, like sync performance, a few virtual machine bugs, but nothing really major. Now it's been running smoothly for a while, which is why we are ready to introduce the mainnet, the node with the activation date. But what's cool during the testnet is it's also where we get the most community feedback. Obviously, some people will play around the devnet as well, but we had feedback from the community, which helped identify a few hedge case on the VM and things like that.
Oh, excellent. Okay, cool. With your max supply being 1 billion and your emission curve, your long-term emission schedule, like you had mentioned, how should miners think about ROIs compared to blockchains with like traditional or classic halving schedules?
Again, as we touched on, so right now there's a max supply, but with the upgrade, that max supply will not be there anymore. But in any
Mhm.
case, doesn't change the question. So it means for the miners. So if you are used to, let's say, Bitcoin with a halving, it's basically it decreases step by step. With Alephium, it's a lot smoother because it did pretty much decrease linearly for 80 years, and slowly decrease linearly, so it's much smoother. um,
Mhm.
it's much smoother and maybe not necessarily more predictable, but maybe more manageable uh, from an ROI perspective, because with the halving from one day to another, your competitiveness in the network dropped by 50% when the halving happened. And
Mhm.
so your ROE also dropped from 50%. And so with this, you don't have cliff. It's kind of really uh, slowly decreases over time. Um, and it lets you amortize hardware a little bit like smoother. It
Hmm.
also means that your rig gets stay competitive a little bit longer, because for example, if you just bought a miner 6 months before halving, its profitability will drop drastically within this. And so
Yeah.
on a halving, on a, like for example on Bitcoin, the timing at which you buy your miner will have a huge impact on your profitability, because its distance the day you purchase in the distance to the halving will definitely have a huge impact on our end. Again, because it's more smooth, it's a linear decrease. um, you can amortize your hardware longer.
Okay, that makes sense. So thinking of it like from the data center perspective, I'm doing hardware refreshes on servers and storage and things like that in my data centers, every 5 years or so, 5 to 7 years depending on, all the things going on. But this emission schedule allows me to amortize that and really plan that out for longer term instead of saying, you know, this is only going to be good for this short amount of time because of
The
the emission
halving that
schedule
is,
on that. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
Okay. Speaking of hardware, now that Alephium supports dedicated ASICs, how has the ASIC adoption impacted the network security and miner economics? And a step further from that, would there be any circumstances in which the team would consider forking the chain to adjust the mining algorithm?
So Alephium was always it was always intended for Alephium to be ASIC friendly. I know, it's a dividing choice. Some people like ASICs, people hate ASICs. I think, from the chain perspective, it makes the hash rate a little bit more reliable,
Hmm.
because you have dedicated miners that are dedicated for you. They cannot jump from one chain to the other. But obviously, especially in the beginning, those it also means from the miner perspective, it's hardware you can't repurpose, which
Hmm.
is a downside. But from the chain perspective, it's a little bit more steady and certain, let's say, hash rate that you can guarantee. And obviously, from an efficiency perspective, ASICs are so much more powerful than
Hmm.
GPU. I mean, depends on
Yeah.
your algorithm, but in our case, they are. Like the hash rate increased more than 20,000 times. 20,000 times since the ASICs came in. So because the hash rate is your network security, right? So it allowed us to bump the security of the network dramatically, compared again more than 20,000 times increase in that. So there's always a question about the timing. Was it too soon? Was it too late? You can never know because it happened when it happened. ASICs were always in the future of Alephium, no matter what. When it comes to adjusting the mining algorithm, I would say, again, because we always intended to be ASIC friendly, we wouldn't have, for example, we wouldn't change the mining algorithm to avoid ASICs being developed.
Mm,
What I could imagine, but again, is if for some reason there would be a mining algorithm that would be much better for what Alephium wants to achieve than the one we currently have, that could be a reason, but it would need to be significantly better and out to a point that it would outweigh the complexity of changing the mining algorithm now that they are ASICs built for Alephium. So I would say the likelihood that that happens is extremely low and most likely won't happen. But the scenario would be, I would imagine.
okay, that's good to know. And I can understand and appreciate that. As much as I loved GPU mining, it is a limited time on projects and blockchains that have long-term goals, and I get that.
And
It helps, ASICs help stability of the network. Like you said, they're not jumping around from coin to coin chasing profits. It's a dedicated machine that's dedicated to your algorithm and your network, and it just runs. It's kind of like servers that are dedicated for your workload.
yeah, and they are, again, so much more performant that you can,
Yeah.
again, number speaks for themselves. It increase and bumps your hash rate so much that from a security perspective, especially when you are a young chain, it really kickstart that security onto your network.
Hmm.
The number, I don't have the numbers, but the amount of GPUs that you would need on the network to reach the hash rate that we have now probably wouldn't be achievable for Alephium in our current, in our current state. So
Yeah.
it really allows to kickstart that, to boost the hash rate as well. And there's another point also, is like, you cannot be ASIC proof. You are ASIC resistant.
Yeah.
You can de-incentivize the fact of building ASICs, but you can never prevent someone from building ASICs. You can make it that it doesn't make sense economically to spend the time doing it. You can make it complicated for them to do it, but you can never 100% be ASIC proof. You can be ASIC resistant. And maintaining that resistance has a cost, because that's something that, again, you have to maintain through time. Some chain have had to fork to update their mining algorithm to maintain it. So there's also a cost into being ASIC resistant, on the development side as well.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And it depends on the project and the blockchain. Some are, like you said, lithium from the start was that was part of the plan.
Yeah.
Some projects like Flux, for example, they don't want anything to do with ASICs, and they've made it, very clear that if a OEM or a producer makes ASICs, they're just going to fork the chain and start over with a new algorithm and
Yep.
and make them chase that again. So
Yeah, and I think it's good. I think in the end, there's not like one size fits all. And I
mhm.
think depending on, again, like you said, the goals and the vision, like, and it's important that project with different vision pursue different roads. So you really have something for everyone.
Shifting gears a little bit, you attended Bitcoin 2025 in Vegas. I saw you
Yeah.
there. It was a man, that was a crazy, crazy first day. There were so many people there. What were some of your biggest takeaways from this event?
For me, it was one of the most interesting events I've attended so far, because it was very different from any other one. In the
Hmm.
sense that there's a lot of events that kind of mesh a little bit together. It's difficult to tell them apart because the experience is very similar. This one was very different. I felt, of course, it was very focused into Bitcoin, but I liked, because of, the adoption we're seeing and the democratization and the acceptance of Bitcoin as an economic tool is growing. It was super interesting to have conversation about exactly this. How can Bitcoin be leveraged into our economics model um, to better them? And so that was very, very interesting, and it felt very concrete, let's say, compared to in some cases, in our Web3 bubbles and things like that. I loved that you had like, you had the senator and the government official next to the anarchists that were like, F the government. And so I
Yeah.
loved also the diversity of perspective and
Mm.
of people
Hmm.
that were speaking. And so I loved seeing those universe collide together into one place.
Yeah, it was definitely a wild time. Just the amount of people there, the type of different perspectives that I saw, and that I heard, in speakers and just talking to passerbys and other people in the attendance. It was a wild time. I'm excited to go to next year's for sure. So, how do you envision Alephium's role evolving in the broader Web3 ecosystem over the next couple of years?
So I mean, I really hope over the next few years that Alephium really continues to push the boundaries of what people think is possible on proof of work and UTXO. It's already
Mhm.
what we've been doing, and I hope we continue to push those boundaries, and I hope we inspire others to do it as well. And hopefully to do it natively. I see a lot of chains that are a lot of projects that are doing basically two chain, like the proof of work chain for settlement, and then a proof of stake or a chain with a different mechanism,
Mm,
or a UTXO chain, UTXO proof of work chain for settlement, and then another chain that is account based, EVM compatible for the smart contract things, which is a good approach. I mean, it's a valid approach. But I would love to see more people pushing the boundaries also kind of natively into layer one. I think,
mm,
reducing complexity, reducing friction is what is going to be important if we want to get out of our little bubble and get people outside the space to adopt blockchain technology into their daily life. So I'd love to see other people continuing to push those boundaries, do better than what we did. But I mean, not too soon. Let us do better for a few years, and then come and do better. But you
and
know
then
what I
join
mean.
us. Yes, and we'll
And
all
then
do better
join us,
together.
or at least, yeah, exploring different ways to do things. So I'd love
Okay.
that.
Okay, so I've got some quick questions for you, lightning round. I'm just going to fire them off and you answer them first thing that comes to your head, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Biggest misconception about Alephium in one sentence.
That proof of work and UTXO can scale or support smart contracts, and we do both natively on a layer one.
Okay. Proof of work and proof of stake in 2025, or I'm sorry, proof of work over proof of stake in 2025. Underrated or overrated?
It's still it's still so underrated. There's still so much more we can do to push the boundaries of proof of work.
Okay. What crypto buzzwords do you wish would disappear tomorrow?
Infinite scalability. I think if any project sells you and use infinite scalability as an argument, you should run away. I mean, that as someone that lives in the more physical world, in the hardware world. it's
Yeah.
like it's like infinite scalability sounds good, but it's just not true until you have physics, bandwidth, and just reality that steps in. So um, that's one of them that always a little bit annoys me when I see people promising like infinite scalability, completely disregarding hardware limitation, bandwidth, and things like that.
Yeah. 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 That's a good one. So, what's your favorite non crypto hobby that balances your day to day grind?
Cooking, but actually eating. It's like, so I like cooking, but mainly because then I get to eat after.
Because then the outcome is you get to eat the good food.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's
That's a
it.
good one. Yeah. Okay. So, fast forward to 2030, 5 years down the road. Hash rate, price, or developer count, which metric matters the most?
Developer and user count.
Okay. Why?
Because I think we are what led to the creation of Alephium was to try and build something useful, to try and take a different approach at what most of the industry was doing, because the founder felt like what most of the industry is doing isn't necessarily the best route to
Hmm.
achieve the goal, or at least it won't be it shouldn't be the only route. There should be alternative route. And so there was a true sense of we want to do something useful. We want to do something that people are going to use. And I think that the other two metrics you mentioned eventually kind of follow those ones.
Good deal. What is one tool that every small scale miner should keep in their arsenal?
You know, before Bitcoin 2025, I wouldn't know what to answer, but now I know that is
Okay.
quality cable. And this is because of a very extensive conversation I had with the veteran miner about
Mhm.
cables, actually. So quality cables is my answer.
That's a good answer. Yeah. What is your go-to Vegas snack during Bitcoin 2025?
Bubble tea. I have and
Bubble tea.
I
Okay.
was so very happy that the Bitmain event was in the hotel complex that has my favorite bubble tea in Vegas.
Huh.
Because I've been to Vegas. I got married in Vegas,
Oh,
actually, and
yeah.
been in Vegas a few times after that. And on the year I got married, we actually was the year after, we found a bubble tea in our hotel that we loved. And
Hmm.
every time I go back to Vegas, I go back there and get a bubble tea. And last year at Bitmain event, the hotel was like 30-minute walking, and I had to walk 30 minutes in the sun to get my bubble tea. But this year, my hotel, because it was the same as Bitmain event, was the hotel with a bubble tea. So I could get my bubble tea every day. So
Nice.
yes, that's
Nice.
a little bit too much information just to say bubble tea.
So, where should our viewers and listeners and people that are interested go if they want to start mining Alephium or building on Alephium today?
We've actually redone our website and we'll continue to add to it. So I would honestly start from the website because from there you can access all of the information that you need. And if you're a
Okay.
miner, and more specifically, if you're a miner, I think that once you've gone around the website, YouTube actually is a pretty good place to go because a lot of
Oh,
people have
yeah.
spent a lot of time doing a lot of tutorials around Alephium mining. So that would be also, as a miner, a pretty good place to go.
Good, Maud. Thank you for your time today. I
Thank you
appreciate
very much.
you taking your time out and talking to us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. I'd love that.